Kevin Durant and Draymond Green are just out here just giving their opinions left and right, and like, why not react to that?
They're
It's the
creating so
NBA.
much content for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm gonna love any like Warriors infighting. So Draymond Green on his podcast, of course, was talking about the United States rotation and lineups, and essentially just talking about how he doesn't like the fact that any single player on the United States team has to be relegated to just not playing in a game. So it was Jason Tatum first. Then they benched Embiid and started Jason Tatum, and Jason and Joel Embiid didn't play in a game. The next time around, against Puerto Rico, Joel Embiid played. I don't know if he started or not, but
I think he did start,
he
but so
started.
did Tatum
Yes, and then
and
Drew
Drew.
Holiday was out.
Right.
So Draymond was just essentially complaining about the fact that the coaches on Team USA hadn't had their lineups and rotations locked in and planned out enough to involve everybody. Draymond Green reminds me kind of like a parent of a middle school team where he's like, everyone needs the same amount of playing time. I feel like the idea of the Team United States this Olympics was to bring the firepower and bring the star power and bring the USA back to prominence or whatever. And I think these players didn't really care about how they were going to win. They just wanted to be there just to say, like, hey, my services are available. At least that's my interpretation. Other
Or at
people can
least
disagree
I
with
think
me.
that's how they would like to think of
Yeah,
themselves, right?
true. Whether or not they actually do is another question, but that was like the idea. But their basketball games may not be dramatic because they're winning them pretty convincingly for the most part. But there's been all this drama and discussion with just like, who are you going to start? Who are you going to bench? So we still have these debates about who's bench one, cut one, start one, the whole like meme that's always online, but it's happening in real time.
I know, right? I didn't even think. Wait, so let's look at the guards. Basically, we have Booker, Ant, and Halliburton
I guess they're
start bench
cutting
cuts.
Tyrese, starting Booker.
Oh man, that's a really good point.
So that's what we're seeing, and
Wait, Kerr is actually playing start bench cut IRL. That's so
hmm
funny.
that's what's happening. That's the only interesting thing that's going on with Team USA in this Olympics, I would say. My reaction to that is just, you guys just shut up and just let them do what they do. You're winning every game. Why are you complaining? You
Will
want
Jones to NBA players, shut up and dribble.
Just shut up and dribble and win the gold. Maybe he did screw up by not playing Jason Tatum. I guess he admitted that and apologized to him or whatever. But I don't know what Jason Tatum really thinks. I wouldn't be surprised if he just was like, oh, whatever, it's
Oh,
fine.
you know what Tatum thinks? Because in the beginning of that Draymond clip, he said, I had to tell JT it doesn't
Oh,
matter
right.
how many minutes you're playing, whether you get, DNP to game, whatever. So you know that that was in response to something that Tatum
Mm,
had told him about probably his feelings on the matter. Right. And
yeah.
we'd had the other quotes from Tatum that came out after it was that first game in pool play versus Serbia where he got a DNP, right? He talked about the, post championship, and he's got the 2K cover and all of that. And he's like, actually, it's been a really humbling experience.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, "Oh, I thought you were gonna talk about how like, oh, like yeah, once you win a championship, like it doesn't matter what anyone says, blah blah blah." But no, it was about the humbling experience, and I think that that shows how for Tatum in particular, but it wouldn't surprise me at all for any of these guys, especially the younger ones, that they care about their public perception, like they care about their image, right? This is something that's been particularly a narrative with the Boston Celtics and with the Jays in particular. We talked earlier about Jaylen Brown feeling snubbed for being off of Team USA in favor of Derek White as the Kawhi replacement, but not just the Celtics, but these two guys in particular being the example. This like ongoing like conflict publicly about like who gets the most credit, who's the best player, this or that. This feels like a little bit of an extension of that, but it's not. I don't think that it's an uncommon sentiment in the NBA, such a star-driven league, right? The thing that for context for the audience, Team USA is 12 players. That's how many you're allowed to have on your roster in the Olympics. There were some teams that were still making cuts like up until like a couple days before the games started. Team Serbia had 16 guys on their roster and they needed to, winnow that down. For reference, in say a regular season NBA game, a 10-man rotation is kind of like the limit. Like that's what you would do in the regular season, particularly at the beginning of the season. Closer you get to the playoffs, the shorter the rotations get. 9 players, sometimes 8 if you're like testing out your tight like 8-man playoff rotation. So the fact that Draymond effectively in this clip said that it was just unacceptable that Team USA was only playing a 10-man rotation in any one of these games, I think makes no sense. Like you said, you kind of referenced with some Warriors infighting. I thought it was kind of a shitty like position for him to put Steve Kerr in, especially after, like you said, Kerr has already come out and sort of apologized. I don't know if that means that he's sorry or if it's because he's good at managing player relationships. That's something that has been, whether you like Steve Kerr and you think it's a strength of his, or you're a fan of the Warriors who was very upset with this past season, that this is kind of the tact that Kerr will play. Like he's actually the guy that, started Klay Thompson for most of the season, even through intense struggles that Klay was having on both ends of the court because of that very principle. So the fact that Draymond is criticizing the Team USA coaching staff, but it's directed at Kerr, he's the head coach, ultimately these decisions are his, is just kind of rich and also perhaps in my opinion maybe unfounded, because like to me, Kerr has gone out of his way in the past in the way that he coaches the Warriors and even in how he's gone with Team USA to try to make sure that everybody does feel included and blah, blah, blah. He went on to criticize the fact that the coaching staff had guys taking turns being DNPs because it's like, well, now they're just like covering their tracks. Like it was okay for JT to not play in the first place. He's like, no, everybody should play basically every game, effectively demanding at least an 11-man rotation. And I don't know if Draymond, I don't remember if he explicitly called out the fact that Halliburton hasn't played in any of these games. I don't know if he's advocating for Halliburton to also be part of the regular Olympic rotation as well, and calling for a 12-man rotation, but he's calling for at least an 11-man one. And he even said in that clip, he's like, Tatum, yeah, he played terribly during the exhibition games, but it doesn't matter. This, that, and the other. There are some other things I want to discuss, but yeah, what do you just think of Draymond sort of not realizing how like a little bit ridiculous what he's asking for is, and the fact that he's like going out of his way to critique the coaching staff for this logistic choice, basically?
I mean, Draymond has relationships with a lot of these dudes, so I'm like,
Yeah,
of course he's
that's
going to
true.
be on their side. But Kerr is also his coach. I wouldn't be surprised if their relationship's a little bit strained through everything that they've gone through. But it is a little bit
Or
annoying
if
to
he feels
me.
like he can say anything because it is his coach, and
Yeah, maybe that.
like sometimes you're maybe less forgiving for the people you're closest to because like they can handle it, like they've heard all of this kind of stuff from me before, whatever it is.
That could be. And then, like, but Kerr's come out and defended Draymond through so much of
Numerous
his
occasions
career. And
on
now,
including
yeah,
last year when he went through, what was it, a 12-game suspension? I mean, for everything, because it was an accumulation of acts throughout the first half of the year, right?
yeah. I mean, I do think Kerr and even Steph said some stuff about Draymond that was, wasn't like they were defending the Nurkic incident.
They're like, he knows he
Yeah,
needs to be better, right? The stuff
yeah,
that you kind of have to say once it escalates to that point. But before
exactly.
that, it was like,
Yep.
see no evil,
Yeah.
basically. Like Kerr has been labeled a Draymond apologist in the past. So the fact that Draymond's kind of going after him this hard is just sort
hmm
of, from a million miles away. Like he's not part of the situation. He's not on Team USA. He is advocating for, like you say, his friends
Yeah.
that are on the team. All these guys know each other.
Yeah, and
Um,
they're just lucky Jordan Poole isn't like really, really good because they chose the dude who punched Jordan Poole over him.
that's true.
He also had some little comment about how Kevin Durant had passed the torch to Tatum,
Or that it was
regards,
supposed to be like that.
yeah, regards to the national team. Kevin Durant's still playing better than Jason Tatum in this tournament, so it's like funny. Draymond just says what he wants to say. and that's part of like his charm and the appeal of his podcast, I guess. So it's like I don't expect him to hold back, but yeah, I don't know how much you can really criticize Kerr. The game's are already shortened as it is, so like getting a
Yeah, it's a
12-man
40-minute
rotation,
game. Like, the game is shorter. It actually doesn't make that much sense to have a 10-man rotation even, like
yeah.
they've had, but they've, had the margin for error they have because they are, Team USA with all of these guys that are gonna be
Hmm.
probably Hall of Famers and all that.
Is there something to be said about chemistry with the lineups and not like subbing guys out too
Right.
much, stuff like that?
Exactly, like, things get choppier. That's part of the logistic, uh, you know, challenge that the Team USA coaches have. I think every other national team has guys that they're like, "Yeah, this guy definitely probably shouldn't play maybe in any of the games." But Team USA has a lot of guys that can play and can make an impact, so they have decisions to make. There was just one more section of this clip from Draymond that I wanted to respond to where he's kind of, working off of this point that they should be playing all of their guys and they should have set rotations where I don't know if everyone's playing like 4 or 5 minute stints or what it is that he's asking for here. But basically saying like I don't want to hear the excuse of we're trying to create lineups to like match other teams and like
Mm.
that kind of thing. He's like, I don't want to hear that excuse because we should have our lineups and they should be trying to match our lineups because we're like so much more superior than the other, teams here. And he might be right about this to an extent, but I will say that I don't think players are like an individual player is necessarily like the best judge of like overall team quality between teams. And maybe the fact that he said this as a critique of Team USA tells you a little bit about how seriously the Team USA coaching staff is taking these other teams. Like we saw when they played Team Serbia in um both in the exhibition and in their group play game, unlike really the other games that were like close and everyone's like, "Oh my god, is Team USA not as good as we think, or like, what are they gonna blow it? Whatever. But when they play Team Serbia, like they take that game very seriously. And that is not just like how the players are playing, but how the coaches are arranging lineups. And the coaching staff is doing this for every team, right? Like they decide to start Embiid again versus Puerto Rico, a tiny team. He can definitely dominate, even though, he scored like, what was it, 14 points and 15 shots or the other way around versus Puerto Rico, but we don't have to linger on that. The point is that it implies that the coaching staff is actually taking the challenge that these other international teams are presenting to Team USA very seriously and like not taking their opponent lightly. I guess thanks Draymond for helping us as the audience realize how much respect the Team USA coaching staff has for the international field, at least in comparison to you or in contrast to you.
I mean, I don't even know if each particular benching of Tatum, Embiid, and Drew has a good argument for them to be benched for that specific team that they were playing or not.
Right, honestly, like, Embiid should have been benched from Serbia, and they kind of was, right? Like, he played 11 minutes in that game as a starter, less than, I think, almost anybody on the
Yeah,
entire team, let
yeah.
alone the other starters. But in terms of just, like, being a DNP, I don't think it made sense to bench Tatum, but I think it was like you talked about this in our last episode, I think, or maybe it was in the Olympic preview where you said, oh, no, it must have been the last episode because it doesn't make sense for Tatum to not play in that game because of Serbia's size. But Embiid, and we talked about this, maybe there's a possibility that he was promised that he would start, which is the only way that that would have made sense. But then he gets DNP'd in that next game, and then he starts again versus Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
even though he's been having a really kind of miserable by his standards Olympics. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think about
In that
that?
regard, it's just kind of like Draymond does have somewhat of a point where it does look a little bit silly, like they're covering their tracks doing the rotating DNPs, like it's your turn now, which maybe is just what they should be doing.
And maybe it doesn't matter at all because they
Yeah.
have so much bigger of a margin for error than any other team here.
Yeah, that's
So,
the other thing. It's kind of nitpicky. Like, as long as you are winning the games, why are we really criticizing them? But, you got to put something out, got to create some buzz somehow.
I mean, that's kind of what we're doing, right? Because Draymond's basically saying that. He's like, we have so much margin for error anyway. Like everyone should just be playing because this man just won an NBA championship, this Jason Tatum. Whereas, the Team USA coaching staff is like, let's at least try, whether you agree with them or not. 'Cause Kerr loves his 3 guard lineups, but he thinks that's the best way for the starters to play when he decides to bench Tatum in a game.
Yeah.
And have
Yeah.
Drew start, right? That's the other, implication there. Clearly he's, like, trying to construct, like, a coherent team because he's like, "Well, I don't wanna, like, take chances against these good international teams," but
There's a point to be made and to criticize Kerr and the Jason Tatum benching. I just think Draymond didn't
right.
really make it that well. So
Exactly. I agree with that. You could go, like, the Jason Timpf route and talk about exactly what I just said, which is like, but Serbia's, like, one of the biggest teams in the entire tournament, and you decided to go 3 guard lineup to start. And actually, those starters were not winning those minutes, right? We talked about how Jokic was able to play them even
mm,
in his minutes, and then it was the bench, that got destroyed.
right.
So that tells you something about how effective that particular strategy was. But Draymond's critique has nothing to do with what Team USA should be doing to, be better and like win these games. He's just saying like just throw guys out there. Everybody should play.
We're coming to the end of the Olympics. This is all going to be over pretty quick, but we're getting to exciting knockout round, high stakes games. So please stick with us through that. We're also going to be doing a off season and conclusion where we like might do some grades. So look forward to that in the future. And then we'll also do an episode about the NBA schedule when that's released, which we don't know when that is exactly, but it is going to be soon. Just keep an eye out for all that. Please subscribe so that you do not miss any of those. We're almost to 500 subscribers. So to those of you who've already
Yay.
subscribed, thank you so much. We love you. And if you haven't yet, please consider doing so. And like the video if you're watching, send our episodes to your friends and tell everyone about it. We really appreciate you guys listening and commenting. Let us know what you think about the Draymond Green comments and whether or not Kerr is making the right decisions with the rotations. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. And remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.
Big time.